So today we're going to be talking about phishing and how we can keep our data safe. And this is a really important subject because confidence in the police is vital, and people trust us with the most sensitive information, and we need that information to be able to keep people safe. So I'm joined today by two colleagues, one from our National Management Centre within the Police Digital Service, Tony, and Neil Baddeley from Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire Police, BCH for short, who are part of their IT team. And I think first of all, we need to get into a quite a simple question and just explain what is phishing. And Tony, could you explain phishing to us?
Yeah, of course, David. We've all heard the term, but to define it maybe slightly different. Phishing with a PH. It's basically a way that a threat actor will reach out to potential victims and try and lure them into doing an action which they wouldn't normally have done. So usually a link within an email which takes them somewhere malicious, or an action such as signing into what appears to be a genuine login page, but as we will probably gather from this training, it will be malicious.
So that's a very simple explanation, and we all get phishing emails every day almost in our personal lives, but this doesn't mean we're not invulnerable from them in policing as well. So Neil, you and your team work closely with the NMC and the NCSC and do a huge amount of work to protect our police colleagues from phishing attacks and other cybersecurity threats, but there's an army of people who and technology is constantly tackling all digital infrastructure and sometimes specifically policing. What are the responsibilities of all staff when it comes to phishing?
Thanks, David. Yeah, so as David said, my name's Neil Baddeley. I work for BCH. I'm the ISO. One of the things that we have to do is make everybody aware that it is everybody's responsibility to think about phishing, what the impact could be, how to deal with them, and ultimately how to protect ourselves and the workforce and the organisation from that kind of threat. So yeah, everyone's responsibility is the answer to that, David.
Yeah, and we mustn't assume that if an email's come through our infrastructure that it is safe, although you do a great deal already to make sure that it is. We'll come to how to report phishing very easily, but there's a really strong message here, and we make no apology for repeating through today's session, that we'd rather have lots of false alarms with good intent than miss a new threat. And Neil, you and your team have been using some technology and some approach that's actually improving the position for the force by better improving leveraging awareness, helping to train people, helping to raise awareness of it, because these attacks are getting really sophisticated. So I think the first question is what's a simulated phishing attack and what's the benefit of it?
Yeah, so this gives us an opportunity. So attack simulation training gives you the opportunity to kind of work out what risk you've got currently from the workforce in terms of phishing and how susceptible you are to it. We have been lucky enough to have a Microsoft E5 license, which gives us the ability to do this kind of attack simulation training on a regular basis, and best of all, in an automated fashion. So yeah, it enables us to train and educate end users is the answer to that.
Fantastic. So can you take us through a bit of a presentation and explain the approach and what you've been finding in BCH?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. So just move on to the next slide there, obviously. So on average in BCH, we see around 70,000 emails, phishing emails delivered on a daily basis. 0.6%, that sounds really small, of those are genuine phishing emails that get through to end users' mailboxes. But effectively that equates to 400 phishing emails per day. So although it's a small percentage, it's a huge number if you think about it on a daily basis. Luckily, the majority of those are blocked by our systems. However, an even smaller percentage of those do get through to the end user into your inbox. So yeah, if we just go on to the next slide there, please. So previously to having our E5 license, there was very limited training that we would give to users, but we've overhauled that completely now to try and reduce that risk down using the Microsoft attack simulation training that we've got. There are other products available. There are other solutions that do this. It's just in BCH we are on that particular tool. The overall goal is to reduce the actual phishing attacks and the success of those phishing attacks by doing this automated training. It provides useful insights to the security. So my teams get the stats, they get the actual click rates, and we can demonstrate then to chief officers or senior board level leaders that actually that this is working, the reduction rate has been reduced, therefore risk to the organisation from a cyber attack is reduced as an end result. But ultimately, you know, it not only goes, you're not only protecting the organisation, but in your personal life as well. It gives a really good kind of overview of what to look for, what to do if you get one of those messages, and then how to react off the back of that as well. Next slide, please. So just to give you a kind of a phishing trip through BCH, if you like. Threat actors are obviously targeting end users on a regular basis, as I showed you at the beginning with them stats. Once that phishing email has been received, what we like to do is train end users to, via Yammer, regular comms out to the business, you know, security awareness campaigns, to click the report message button in Outlook. So we have enabled a button which just gives you the ability to click as soon as you think that there's something phishing related or dodgy or spam or whatever it might be. You can just click that button and that's all you need to do. The message will then disappear from your inbox, and the end user will be notified that they've, you know, successfully submitted that to my security team or a security team, from which point then on the message is investigated. So we have a kind of a central place that once you've clicked that button, all of those messages end up in. So we can go through that list, determine if they are genuine phishing emails. A lot of that is done automatically by Microsoft, but there are some which we need to just go and investigate further. We would then make a decision based on that threat, or based on the, you know, the quantity of phishing emails that have come in off the back of a threat hunt, to actually go and either soft or hard delete the emails from the entire organization, so that, you know, that threat is kind of eliminated. Some of those phishing emails need to be then sent up the chain, so over to the NMC for that national, to deal with it from a national perspective, and to really, you know, help protect policing across the board. Next slide, please. So yeah, I mentioned earlier around the report message button. That's what effectively it looks like for our end users. On a monthly basis, we're sending out over 10,000 attack simulation emails. So just a, you know, a genuine, what looks like a genuine phishing email sent out with some links on, as you can see. A portion of those will be successfully deleted or reported. A smaller portion of people will click links or enter credentials. And for those that do, who click the link or put their usernames and passwords in, the system is catching that and then targeting those users with specific training related to the risks that they've just opened themselves up to, and then what to look out for in the future. It's actually really created a good kind of talking point amongst officers, chief officers and staff, who's clicked it, who hasn't clicked it. You know, rather than trying to catch people out, we've tried to just, you know, kind of communicate it as an awareness training campaign, not that we're trying to catch you out for then something action to happen off the back of it. As I mentioned earlier, we're using Yammer to send out the constant messaging around what to do, what to look out for. Every person who works for BCH is a mandatory member of a cybersecurity channel, and those messages then are flowing through into people's mailboxes off the back of Yammer. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there's a slight, this slide says 3 months there at the top, and it's 6 months on the side. It is 6 months. 90% improvement in 6 months is what we've seen. So from the inception of that project, from being quite a high click rate in terms of people putting credentials in, we've really reduced that down now, which is a massive improvement, and shows that, you know, it works. You know, doing user awareness training, attack simulation training works, and it helps to protect the organization. Next slide, please. That is the end. Are there any questions on that?
Well, if you can pop your questions into the chat, that'd be really helpful. And just a question for me on this is, how do staff normally react when they fall foul of this, or even if they are actually fall foul of a real phishing attack, what's the common thing for policing to do on this, and what do we need to change?
So it's a bit of panic, really. Have I genuinely been, put the organisation at risk? Policing is under incredible pressure as it is at the minute. And then to have this on top of someone's daily life, the worry that they're clicking on the wrong thing, or they're putting their passwords into not a genuine website. It really does affect end users when they get these through, and the genuine ones through. So by, again, doing the awareness campaigns, we're reducing that kind of pressure to the workforce, and ultimately protecting ourselves from cybersecurity threats as well.
Now, the complexity and sophistication of the cyber phishing attacks has actually massively had a step change in recent months. So, Tony, from the NMC point of view, you work closely with our colleagues at the National Cyber Security Centre as well. What are we seeing at a national level, and not just within policing, but wider across? Can you take us through a few slides and just give us a bit of context on that, Tony?
Yeah, of course I can, David, no problem. So just to explain, the NMC, for those who aren't aware, it's a 24/7 cybersecurity and incident response centre based in Lancashire, and we push out the Defenders One strategy, and we nationally coordinate and locally deliver the facilities that we have here to protect the protectors, if you like to use a bit of a tagline. We do work with the NCSC, as you mentioned, the sharing of information there to protect all the stakeholders, and to try and help national infrastructure stay safe from cyber attacks. So anything we see, we might push out to them, and vice versa if we think it can help with our main campaign. So if we just go to the next slide, and there's just some stats really around phishing and how kind of prevalent it is. So it's still the most common form of attack. You can see there 83% of UK businesses that did suffer an attack in 2022 claim that it came from a result of a phishing email, and a member of staff unfortunately falling for that bait. The use of stolen credentials is the most common cause. So we see data breaches all the time. We see email addresses and passwords being shared online. These are used by threat actors. They're used not only to try and compromise accounts, but to use as circulation lists to send these phishing emails out and about. And to coin a genuine phishing kind of phrase, is that they cast their net far and wide. They send these emails out to as many mailboxes as possible for your general phishing campaigns. And of course, you've got your spear phishing, your whale phishing. They are basically where we have some social engineering aspects being used by the threat actor to target individuals who may have access to more sensitive data. For instance, Google do block around 100 phishing emails a day, but yeah, millions and millions still get through, and over a fifth come from Russia, basically down to a lot of the state-sponsored threat actors over there. It's a huge business, particularly in that state, and the average cost of a data breach can be more than $4 million. Nothing that an organisation wants to start worrying about. If we can have the next slide. So why is it so prevalent? Well, as we say, the human element is what the threat actors are trying to target here. We can have all the great systems that we might have, firewalls, defenders, etc., all these different algorithms, but the human element, you're still going to have that lure. So someone will open that phishing email, there will be a sense of urgency behind it, a sense of, oh, I've got maybe 2 days to complete this before we lose the data or the password has expired. Large organisations have a high staff turnover, which is new victims, new recipients, and the training there that Neil's mentioned, that's why it gets pushed out all the time. These new people come into a company, an organisation, and they're falling foul of these tactics. And I've mentioned there the changing trends that target the public, the users. We use the COVID, Russian invasion of Ukraine, the death of Her Majesty, etc. Anything that's new, anything that's current affair, that will be used in a campaign, and they get pushed out regularly. We can have the next slide. So I'm going to move on to a slide which basically looks at the current trends that we're seeing. So we've got the reply chain email attacks, or the business email compromise. That's where you might receive an email from someone you're used to receiving them from. However, that email actual inbox has been compromised. So that email has been composed by a threat actor. So we're just asking people, basically the message is stop and think, why am I receiving this email? Why am I being asked to log in or give these details? particularly if it's from maybe a conversation which ended months ago. It might be a third-party supplier, for instance, and that kind of contract came to a natural end, but all of a sudden you're getting an email from them asking it to sort of carry on and provide some details. You can see on the right there something we've seen the last couple of weeks coming into some forces. I have obfuscated that for obvious reasons. The actual email did not contain any links. It didn't contain any kind of forward actions for the person other than the instruction to scan the QR code. It's the first time we've seen that. Because there was kind of less data within that email, it was landing in a few more inboxes than it may otherwise have landed in. Thankfully, it didn't have an impact, but it's a new tactic. Having scanned that QR code, you'll see some of the screens that the user was taken to in the next few slides in a minute, but it was full renders of Microsoft genuine pages. The only tell within those pages was in the URL line at the very top, and to draw people's attention away from that was full adverts, full genuine adverts which had been rendered. We see Microsoft Office 365 login panels regularly, asking people to put their passwords in. And the clever part of the email, it will automatically fill in the recipient's email address, and it looks entirely genuine, which is why we take that stance of take 5, stop and think before you put those credentials in. Why am I being asked for them? So the next couple of slides, David, is just some of the screenshots that we've taken from that QR code. As you can see, that looks entirely genuine. It's a complete render from a Microsoft page, and as I said, the only tell is the URL line at the top there, and there's one more I think after this with adverts from, again, genuine Microsoft pages. So there's some of the tactics we're seeing. We've also had attachments that appear to be OneNote files or Teams folders, so it's just something for people to look out for and think before they click.
And I think it's that point, isn't it, that the sophistication is only increasing because it's not the Nigerian prince as much now, and we'll start seeing these in our home email as well, won't we? As more and more.
Absolutely, yeah. The courier was a big one as well. The likes of DHL, Royal Mail, as you say, they could land in your work email or your home email, and even if they land in your junk folder, that still puts users at risk because it's still accessible.
So, Neil, it could be it is stressful if you think you've become a victim on behalf of a victim or yourself. And I think there's a big difference between at home, you just think, oh, I'll go and sort that out later, versus at work. So what should you do if you accidentally fall foul of an attack? Because these are confidence tricksters who are working very hard to try and get past the knowledge that we all have. So what's the first thing they should do?
Yeah, so in BCH, we have a published playbook for exactly this type of scenario. So all end users are advised to, first of all, reset their password, contact the service desk, and if they see signs of infection or malware or something like that, to disconnect from the network that they're currently connected to. The contacting of the service desk or the security team is the most, is one of the most important things within that, along with everything else, so that we can act quickly. And the thing is not to be worried or concerned about contacting these people or these service desks. Nobody is going to get into trouble. Everybody is human at the end of the day. Everybody falls foul of these phishing attacks, and we're acutely aware of that. So it's trying to get that message across that there's nothing to be afraid of in reporting if you do or if you don't click on those links. Yes, there can be consequences, but we're here to help and to protect. So it's very important that you do.
So, Neil, if you suspect you've got a phishing attack, what should you do? How do you report it?
So again, in BCH, we have if you suspect that you've had a phishing email in your inbox and you're looking at a genuine phishing email, quite simply, we have the report it button, the report message button. You simply click that button and we do the rest. You don't need to worry, unless we then get in contact to say, right, you need to change your password, or there's then knock-on effects. But again, we're here to support and help and kind of be there to pick up the pieces if need be.
And you covered some of that in the presentation earlier on, and it's really important that we'd much rather get false reports, because they're easy to deal with ones that are false reports. That doesn't actually cost you an awful lot of effort in terms of dealing with it, does it?
Absolutely not. No. So a lot of what we get through are actually just deemed as spam emails, and there's no threat attached to that email at all. Again, once you've clicked that button in report message in Outlook, that comes through into kind of another inbox that we see as a security team, and we can go through each one of those emails and make a decision. And sometimes it's even automated in terms of whether or not that then gets escalated, whether or not we can send that to Microsoft, whether or not we need to send it to the NMC to enhance that future capability of protection across the board.
And Tony, you know, one officer or member of staff pressing a phishing button in a force could end up with it going through that escalation process, coming into the NMC, and even go over to the NCSC nationally, and we could help protect all industries from this sort of attack, can't we? You know, that's the relationship you have at a national level.
Now, Neil's mentioned there about they come into us, and Neil and I speak quite regularly, and we always encourage forces or anyone to send us anything they think is phishing. We'd rather, as you say, it be genuine than what could go wrong, and we can then do our work. We can look across other forces networks and see if anyone else has received it. They're not always targeted, which is the good news, but sometimes they can be, and that's the worry. You know, are police being targeted? And in terms of your home email, we can always report to the NCSC as well, report at phishing.gov.uk, any email you get in, because it may land in a home email, and then next week it could be going on to corporate networks. So report them, see it, get it done.
And this is the UK approach of Defenders One. You know, we do work across policing, across public sector, and across all industries by using the skills and techniques that we've got. And you know, it is quite literally one person pressing the right button at the right moment can protect a lot of people and maintain that public trust, which is absolutely critical. We had a couple of questions come in, and I think it's a really important one here that Simon in Kent and Essex is talking about. Expand on the mandatory groups on Yammer. What's the purpose of that if you're also sending emails out? And I think the point is that Yammer's a little bit more than just a push messaging, that you can actually have conversations to try and help move things on. Could you go into a little bit more depth about the work you do proactively?
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good question, Simon. So we used to have a tool that would do a screen pop to everyone's computer if there was an imminent or a happening cyber attack or a genuine phishing email that was going out to everyone's mailboxes. We've come on a lot further from that now with Yammer. So rather than doing that in your face screen pop, you must accept this message, we're now sending out regular twice a week Yammer updates around the current cybersecurity threats that policing is seeing, articles from the news that could affect you in your personal life in terms of cybersecurity, and then intermingled within that is also what to do if you were to have a phishing email. So we would regularly update, say, right, this is what you should do. Here's a screenshot of the button you need to push. This is an email that we've seen recently. Be on the lookout. Something like that. We have made sure, and we've had buy-in from the chiefs, that everyone in the organisations, the 3 organisations, is in that Yammer group and gets those messages. When we post to Yammer, it's also then automatically emailing that same message to your inbox as well. There's a bit of future thinking in that as well, how we can take that even further, but that is effectively what it's for.
So it's about creating not just a push campaign, but it does allow people to ask questions to go, they've spotted your latest simulated attacks and things like that. Could start having that, and it gets a conversation going around this, which actually helps to raise awareness. Another great question in from Emma in Kent, and don't go into anything too technical, but when you receive reported emails, is it easy to spot the emails that have gone to multiple inboxes?
Really easy, yeah. So it's automated more or less, so you can click a button to do a threat hunt, or you can click some links within the M365 users mission portal that then goes on to take you to do a threat hunt to search all mailboxes for the indicators of compromise that have been seen in that email that's been reported. So it will look for the domain that it's come from, the content of the email, the links that are included, the file attachments, through all mailboxes in the organisation, provide you with a list then of what it's found. You then have the option to go in and soft delete or hard delete those emails and protect further.
And I think it's a proactive approach you're taking here rather than reacting and waiting for the attacks to happen. You're actually trying to coach people, bring up that education, look for the problems, and that is obviously going to have quite an impact over time. As you said, over the 6-month period, you've had a massive impact in terms of reducing that risk, which is absolutely critical. And all this is included within the blueprints that all forces can actually implement this sort of approaches. They've got to get the right licensing, but the phishing button is part of the blueprint. Everything else that can be put in place, and the Yammer communities, the proactive approach is all part of it. There's some takeaways I'd almost summarize here before I come to the last question for you, Neil, is, attacks are getting more and more credible and harder to spot. The IT systems and the teams behind them are doing a huge amount to protect our systems, but we've all got a small part to play, and that part can be as easy as clicking a couple of buttons. And in the new Outlook, as you may have seen previewed on our webinar a couple of weeks ago, it's even easier to right-click in the inbox tray to report a phishing attack. All of this can be done. We all need to be that professional cynic in policing, and in our personal lives as well. The ABC of policing: accept nothing, believe nobody, and challenge everything. It's a nice little mantra to help keep you safe at home and in the policing environment. Report it if you've got any doubt, and report immediately if you think they've succeeded in doing it. You will be supported. And I suppose for the leadership teams and people of your equivalency, Neil, in other roles, do have a look at this proactive approach of the simulated attacks here. You are sending simulated attacks to your chief officer team as well as the newest recruits, aren't you? Is this a really good way of helping to move things forward, Neil?
Absolutely, it totally is. So we went on a bit of a journey to get buy-in for doing exactly what you've just said there, David. We had to engage with chief officer teams to ensure that the current force morale, or the situation that the force was in, that the chiefs were seeing at their level, we were on board with, and that we weren't interfering with what the current outlook was from that force's perspective. So we did a lot of work in terms of engaging with the chief officer teams, getting them on board, and then after that presenting back to them what we found. There were many presentations I was in to chief officers across the 3 forces where there were sharp intakes of breath to the actual results of our phishing campaigns, and it kind of brings home that risk to policing, to that chief level. If one of those phishing attacks were to be realized and successful, and ultimately then expose or actually take control of one of those vulnerabilities that potentially you have, it could be game over for policing for a number of weeks in those particular areas, because you've got to then recover from that. You'll be full on cyber incident response, all off the back of a phishing email, and that was a real win from a perspective of showing those stats to the chief officers that we're improving, 90% improvement rate. Therefore, risk to policing is lowered in that respect.
That's fantastic. So I really hope a lot of people get a lot out of today's webinar. And remember that all our webinars are available anytime on demand via our YouTube channel. If you head over there, you click subscribe, then whenever we upload a new webinar, you'll get a little notification, turn the little bell on as well, so you make sure you keep it up to date. Just in terms of events coming soon, we've got a really good webinar next week led by Leicestershire Police in terms of asset tracking with Microsoft 365. And then we're going to take a bit of a summer break, and we've already got our first webinar in September, straight after the summer break, planned in. We pushed one back a little bit. We had initially planned to do it before the summer break. We're going to push it back a little bit, and then we're straight into the Police Digital Summit. So, and there's more details of that coming very, very soon. So I really hope you've been able to join us today. If you do have anything else, please head over to the PDS website, get in touch with us, use the contact us. We use 365 again as a tool to help us manage that contact through the business, and make sure you get back to you as quickly as we can. A really big thank you for Neil and Beds, Hearts and Cams for sharing their experience. It's a really eye-opener, and I hope anybody who watches this phishing webinar can learn something about how to keep themselves safe, both in work and at home. Please share this webinar on with friends and colleagues. And Tony, thanks for you as well, and the 24/7 NMC team, which is part of the Police Digital Service, helping to keep this safe. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you very soon.